is it about eyes? Why is it that when we look into someone's eyes, even through a photograph, we can sense something about them? Maybe we sense peace. Maybe we feel unmasked. Maybe we sense turbulence. Maybe we feel understood. Maybe we sense danger. Maybe we feel welcomed. And it's not just the eyes of fellow human beings. The eyes of certain animals can trigger emotions within us just as much as, and sometimes even more, as can the eyes in statues and in paintings. Why is it that the eyes are what haunt us the most after a loved one has passed? And why is it that the eyes seem to shine this otherworldliness through the same sense organs that keep us most bound to this world? On the morning of the 4th day of one of my most intense and painful awakenings, just a few hours before I broke through the consuming darkness that comes right before the revelation, a saying kept coming in and out of my consciousness, and I want to share that saying with you. But I will do that at the end of this video because it will make more sense then. Hi there, my name is Mai and I make videos about spirituality, mythology, and philosophy, so if you're into that kind of thing, please subscribe to my channel and follow me on social media. So if you've ever had a dark night of the soul, which I'm sure you've had if you're on the spiritual path, you know how after they pass, you realize that they were a kind of test. A test of the veils of your perception so that when their illusory nature is revealed, you can see reality as it is, including seeing yourself as you are, instead of through stories, fears, shame, pride, and attachments. The key to these realizations is, as what the author Michael Brown likes to say, using your real eyes. Different practices from different spiritual traditions aim to remove these veils so you can see clearly. In these different spiritual traditions, sight is not only attributed to your biological eyes, but also to your heart, to your soul, and to non-physical eyes such as the third eye, which is associated with the pineal gland, and the sixth chakra, the ajna. In English, there are many verbs associated with sight: seeing, looking, watching, observing, staring, leering, gazing. And sight can be either active or passive. Try this exercise with me right now. Find an object in front of you and look at it. Use your sight to focus on it and take in as many visual details as possible. This is a kind of active sight. Now soften your gaze and let the image of the object just come into you. So your eyes become receivers instead of seekers of visual information. This is a kind of passive sight. Later, after this video, I want you to try this exercise out with the entire room so you can get a better feel for the difference between active and passive sight. There are theories out there that state that these two types of vision were developed for hunting and gathering respectively, with the more focused and active sight used to track and hunt prey, and the more diffused, softer, passive sight taking in the full surroundings in order to easily locate berries and other edible plants all over the place. I don't know how valid these theories are, but they might explain that phenomenon where women are able to easily find things that men have kind of lost, such as wallets and keys and maybe glasses. Scientifically speaking, studies do show that the eyes can give us a lot of information about someone's internal state, even if they're trying to hide it. Also, the pupils, which are the openings in the eyes that allow the light through to the retina, contract and dilate involuntarily in response to signals from the autonomic nervous system, or the ANS. The ANS prepares our bodies and reflexes to take certain types of action in response to a threat or an opportunity. The fight or flight response, for example, is part of that, as are your pupils dilating or contracting. Someone's pupils dilating upon seeing you can be a signal of them being attracted to you, interested in you, or scared of you. And your ANS takes that all in and gives rise to certain nonverbal cues back from you depending on how you feel about that person or situation, all below the level of consciousness. But like in my video about the weighing of the heart ceremony, I don't want to get too technical, and instead I want to focus on the esoteric nature of the eyes. And again, like in that video, I want to start with ancient Egyptian mythology, which is one of my biggest loves. In ancient Egypt, the eye was one of the most important symbols of protection and power. Myths surrounding the eye of Ra and the eye of Horus show the eye having a will of its own, sometimes going on seek and destroy missions, sometimes representing the moon and the sun, sometimes bestowing healing and even resurrection, and sometimes it is personified by powerful goddesses such as Hathor and Sekhmet, but mostly by the goddess Wadjet. The goddess Wadjet is a cobra goddess who was usually accompanied by Nekhbet, the vulture goddess, which I'm wearing right now. Together they are called the Two Ladies and were both worshipped by all Egyptians when Upper and Lower Egypt unified over 5,000 years ago. Closely associated to Wadjet was the uraeus, which is the Greek name for the ancient Egyptian symbol of a rearing cobra, usually worn on royal crowns in order to watch and be ready to attack anyone or anything that posed a threat to the king. Outside of ancient Egypt, you are probably familiar with the all-seeing eye, which is sometimes called the Eye of Providence. It is sometimes shown as an eye surrounded by a triangle that is supposed to represent the Christian Holy Trinity, or as an eye that is surrounded by clouds or rays of light. The all-seeing eye has been a controversial symbol for many years. On the one hand, symbolizing the omniscience of God benevolently watching over creation, and on the other hand, some interpretations say it's a Luciferian symbol used by the Illuminati. And depending on which you believe, your opinion of the dollar bill with the eye on top of a pyramid will vary. The eye being a malevolent force is not a new concept, and it is not only attributed to Illuminati conspiracies. The evil eye is a concept that spans millennia across many different cultures, but especially in the Middle East, North Africa, and West Asia. For example, in Egypt nowadays, you'll find people being careful when giving you a compliment. And that's because they fear that while giving you a compliment, they will covet the thing they are complimenting you about and therefore jinx your good fortune, in essence giving you an evil eye. That's why they sometimes also use religious words or phrasing when they are praising or giving a compliment. The idea behind that is that as the eyes look at something desirable, such as a beautiful car, that desire might end up turning into envy or greed, whose energies are destructive to that thing that is being appreciated. There's a saying in Egypt that I really love, and it's one that my mother uses whenever I lose or damage something that I really loved, and it is "Khadat al-shar urahat," which actually means something like "it took the evil and left." And what that is supposed to mean is basically that this object that has been lost or damaged basically absorbed any malevolent energy that were directed at me or at it, and kind of has been sacrificed for the sake of maybe something more precious, such as health and well-being or relationships or connection to God. Many amulets and talismans have been around since antiquity that are supposed to ward off the evil eye. You may have seen the nazar, which are eye-shaped amulets, usually in blue or green crystals, and the khamsa, which is sometimes called the hand of Fatma or the hand of Miriam, with an eye in the middle. But for the sake of simplicity, let's put the conspiracy theories and superstitions aside for today and instead focus on individual spiritual practice. The eyes are indeed the windows to the soul, but sometimes they can be hijacked by the ego. And if we look at the world through the eyes of the ego, which is based on fear and lack and comparison and competitiveness, What happens then is that we begin to juxtapose ourselves and other people as either more than or less than. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want to make an enemy of the ego, and in fact, the ego does have its place. It is basically an extension of ancient survival mechanisms that help us identify our position in the tribe, help us watch out for danger, and help us compete for resources. In that sense, it is just another aspect of the self that is trying to keep us safe, well-fed, and with the best choice of mate. Unfortunately, however, it also places the self as the central figure of this ever stressful drama of life, which does end up hurting us in the long run. And as we grow more and more in consciousness, these functions become limitations. And if we keep looking through their distorted lenses, what will happen is that we'll end up suffering more and more. The sense of fear and lack and competitiveness and comparison become the bars of our prison, and the stories they tell us become our lives. In order to turn this around, we must break out of this tunnel vision and look at reality as it is. We begin this journey by taking an honest look at our lives, even though that is terrifying. We see our stories for what they are, just stories, and we look at our thinking and our patterns and our behavior that are related to these stories, and eventually we look at ourselves without running away. And finally, we can even look at other people as they are, even the ones that have hurt us and disappointed us, beyond our past experiences of them, beyond our judgments and labels of them. When we can do that on a consistent basis and for the love of God without suppressing our emotions, we begin to see the world through the eyes of the soul, beyond fear and pain. We see reality as it is right now while still sensing that nameless infinite behind it. This journey begins and ends with honesty. And so my question for you today is, what have you been most avoiding looking at? And are you ready to look at it now? As you do this, remember to be gentle with yourself. Most of us have been running away from looking at the truth inside of us for many, many years. And as you begin to look at this truth, remember to do so free of attachment and stories. Anytime you catch your mind beginning to label it or interpret it, just go back to seeing with the eyes of the soul. You'll know you have accomplished this task when you no longer feel the urge to run away or explain it away. And then you will have reached a place of true sincerity. That brings me to the saying I wanted to share with you at the end of the video. It is by an 8th century Iraqi Sufi saint named Rab'a al-Adawiyya, who was renowned for the intensity of her devotion and dedication. As her saying kept wafting in and out of my mind, it began to take a life of its own until it reached a wording that felt like a fusion of her heart and mine. And the words were, "Master of the world, let those who seek to enter your gates first pass through the fire of my eyes. Only the sincerest in heart shall be able to hold my gaze." It is true that the eyes are the windows to the soul, but sometimes through the years they begin to accumulate dirt and debris. So if you want to be free, if you want to see things as they really are, if you want to be a seer of truth, if you want to see clearly, then clean those windows up. The fire of your gaze will then burn through to the truth of who you are, and you will also be able to see the truth of other people too. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like and share it with anyone else you think might enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.